When you picture Charlie Chaplin, you probably think of the little tramp, right? The bowler hat, the cane, that funny little walk. But behind all that comedy was one of the bravest social critics of the 20th century. He wasn't just trying to make us laugh. He was actually using comedy as a weapon against the biggest, most dangerous forces of his time. So let's dig into how he did it.
And really, that's the big question for us here. How on earth did a guy who got famous by being silent manage to shout so loudly against these dehumanizing machines and totalitarian dictators? Well, the answer is all in how he told his stories, frame by incredible frame. To really get to the heart of his genius, we're going to use a little tool called frame study. Basically, we'll break down these key visual moments from his films, because Chaplin was an absolute master of visual storytelling. He packed every single frame with layers of meaning, telling a story that, honestly, words just couldn't capture. Okay, so let's kick things off with his 1936 masterpiece, Modern Times. This film was Chaplin's direct response to the Great Depression and the just crushing weight of industrial capitalism. He looked around and saw a world where people were literally becoming cogs in a giant, heartless machine. The movie opens with this incredibly striking comparison. First, you see a shot of sheep, all herded together, moving as one big mass. Then, bam, an immediate cut to factory workers pouring out of a subway, moving in the exact same mindless way. Now, this is way more than just a clever edit. It's a huge statement. Chaplin is basically saying that modern society is conditioning us to act like a flock, to give up our individuality for the sake of the system. And once we're inside the factory, that dehumanization gets even worse. We see the tramp on the assembly line just frantically tightening bolts with these jerky, repetitive motions. The work is so mechanical that his body starts twitching on its own, even when he's not on the line. It's visualizing this very modern fear, that the machine isn't just a tool we use. It's something that's reprogramming our bodies, stripping away our creativity and self-control. I mean, doesn't that sound a little familiar today in our world of algorithms and automation? And that leads us to one of the most iconic images in all of cinema. The tramp is literally swallowed by the machine, just pulled right into its massive gears. This isn't just a gag, it's this terrifying metaphor for the core anxiety of the 20th century, that the systems we built to serve us have gotten so big and powerful that now they consume us. It's no longer about machines serving people, it's about people serving machines. Chaplin really twists the knife with the feeding machine. It's this ridiculous invention designed to feed workers while they're still on the assembly line, to get rid of the wasted time of a lunch break. Of course, the machine goes completely haywire, and it's hilarious, but there's a really dark edge to the comedy. It exposes this cruel logic that sees a basic human need like eating as just an inefficiency that needs to be engineered away for the sake of profit. But here's where the film lands its most powerful punch, and it's just dripping with irony. After the tramp gets arrested, he finds that life in prison is actually better than life on the outside. Why? Because prison gives him food, shelter, and security. All the things that free society couldn't. Chaplin is asking this devastating question. What good is freedom in a system that can't even guarantee your survival? It's a critique that feels incredibly relevant today, in a world of gig work where the freedom to be your own boss can often feel like the freedom to struggle. So Modern Times was a brilliant critique of this big, impersonal system. But just 4 years later, that same mechanical, controlling logic found its ultimate expression in the rise of fascism. So what happens when that indifferent machine gets a human face, a tyrant's face? In 1940, Chaplin's critique got even more pointed with The Great Dictator. Now, at a time when, let's be honest, most of the world was terrified to even confront Hitler, Chaplin did it head-on, using his most powerful weapon, satire. This wasn't just a movie. For him, it was a moral war. Early in the film, we see stormtroopers terrorizing a Jewish ghetto. And what's so striking is that the violence isn't chaotic. No, it's organized, it's systematic, and it's chillingly impersonal. The soldiers are just acting like cogs in a machine of hate. Chaplin is showing us that tyranny operates exactly like the factory in modern times. It relies on this mechanized cruelty to crush the human spirit and turn normal life into a zone of constant fear. And here's the face of that machine, Adenoid Hynkel, Chaplin's scathing caricature of Hitler. Whenever Hynkel gives a speech, he's just spewing this angry, guttural nonsense. It's not real language, but the crowd, they go absolutely wild. Chaplin totally understood that fascist language wasn't about ideas or reason. It was a weapon. It was pure spectacle, designed to manipulate emotions and just completely overwhelm rational thought.
So what Chaplin is really doing here is breaking down the authoritarian playbook for us. It's all about spectacle over actual substance. It's about using language as a weapon. It's about raw emotional manipulation. The whole thing is just a performance of power, designed to make the leader seem godlike and the followers totally obedient.
And that brings us to another one of those scenes that's just burned into film history. Hynkel does this strangely delicate, almost ballet-like dance with an inflatable globe of the world. It perfectly captures the dictator's psychology, this delusional megalomania, the belief that he can hold the entire world in his hands. But then the globe pops. It's such a brilliant metaphor for the fragility of that kind of power. It's just an empty, inflated ego, and it's bound to burst.
Chaplin also goes after Hitler's ally, Mussolini, with this ridiculous character named Benzino Napaloni. And their scenes together are just pure slapstick. It's this contest of egos to see who can get their barber chair to sit higher than the other. But this silly scene reveals something really important, that so much of this authoritarian power is just posturing. It's a performance built on intimidation and symbols, not on any real leadership or moral authority. But then, after all the satire, after all the comedy, Chaplin does something absolutely unprecedented. He stops the film cold, he breaks character, and he speaks directly to us, the audience, delivering one of the most powerful speeches in the history of cinema. In the film's climax, the little Jewish barber, who looks just like the dictator, is mistaken for Hynkel, and he's pushed in front of a microphone to address the world. And in that moment, Chaplin drops the comedy entirely. This is Chaplin the man, not the tramp, making this passionate, direct appeal for peace, equality, and compassion. Everything his films have been fighting for. What he delivers is this powerful argument for humanism as an act of resistance. He calls on soldiers not to obey machine men with machine minds and machine hearts, directly tying the fascism of this film back to the industrial dehumanization of modern times. The speech is basically a call to arms for our better nature, a plea to defend our humanity. So in the end, what's Chaplin's final message? It's a declaration of faith in the individual. He's arguing that the ultimate defense against any oppressive system, whether it's a factory or a fascist state, is the conscience and the moral courage of just one ordinary person. And that leaves us with a pretty big thought. Chaplin made that plea back in 1940, facing very specific threats. But his warnings about losing our humanity to these massive systems of power, well, they feel more relevant now than ever. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, who are the machines and the tyrants that Charlie Chaplin would be challenging today?